The Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Pride Seeds, Cruiser Max Vibrance Beans, High Stick NT, and the Manitoba Pulse and Soybean Grower.
Today we're joined by Shawn Brenneman and Marijke Van Andel from Syngenta. And we're here at the Honeywood Research Farm just outside Plattsville, Ontario. Hey, thanks for hosting us.
Oh, thanks, man.
Awesome. Hey, today I want to talk about soybean cyst nematode. Probably the most imposing, the most expensive pest that farmers run into. And we're going to talk about how it's grown and progressed and moved across this province over the last 5 years. And maybe I'll start with you folks. What did that picture look like 5 years ago, the impact of soybean cyst nematode?
Sure, I'll take the first one. So the initial survey that came out several years ago really showed that soybean cyst nematode was a major problem in southwestern Ontario. It was in the deep southwest in particular. It was really more identified first in around that 1988. So since the initial identification, we know it's been spreading. And I think at that point, we knew that it spread further from some of those initial sites, but maybe not to the extent of where we think maybe it is today.
Mm-hmm. Now, and you guys have done a lot of research, done a lot of sampling, worked with a lot of growers, and you're building a new map. And maybe tell me what that new map looks like 5 years later.
Mm-hmm. So we've got, in the last year, we've actually sponsored 300 samples for growers in kind of those fringe regions of where SCN wasn't identified previously. And through that, we've been able to say, how much further is the SCN really spreading from that original map? And what's the prevalence maybe in some of those areas where it was low 5 years ago? Is it getting higher? Are we starting to see more levels of soybean cyst nematode in those other areas as well?
Mm-hmm. Now, Marijke, just comment on that map today. Where are the new areas on that map?
Yeah, so I think just shifting back, last year as well, there was a survey conducted in Huron with the soil and crop there, and that was in conjunction with Corresponder as well, and they saw that over 50% of the samples taken in that county came back as positive for SCN. So that was a big, I think, shocker for the industry to see Huron County as not a traditional county with SCN pressure to have such high pressure and such high just prevalence. With the new map that we've been doing here at Syngenta, we've seen even in Kincardine, so further up the lake, we've seen levels of over 30,000 eggs per 100 grams of soil. So that's unreal pressure that we wouldn't expect to see up there. So SCN is, as many of you know, it travels anywhere that soil moves. So through erosion, by water, by equipment, on your work boots, right? Anywhere that soil goes. So I think that's why we're starting to see it spread. There's other areas, east of the 400 highway, we're starting to see little spots show up here and there, and even into Quebec. So from what I've seen from the sampling so far, it's just a matter of time before we see it everywhere where soybeans are grown.
Shawn, back to you for a second. Talk about, I guess, maybe the impact. I mentioned in the opening, the most impactful pest when it comes to yield. Just talk about what growers need to be doing. More of.
Sure. Soybean cyst nematode is sometimes called the hidden pest, and that's because sometimes you can see up to 30% yield loss in a field without ever seeing any visual symptoms. So you might actually have yield loss, attribute it to weather, attribute it just to the environment, but it's actually SCN in the roots, in the soil, that's causing that yield loss. So even though you don't see any visual symptoms, you might have SCN. In severe cases, when you start to talk very high levels, then you might start to see some chlorosis of the leaves, stunted plants, secondary diseases. You might see a lot more sudden death syndrome in the field. So SCN, because of the way it feeds on the roots, it can actually allow other secondary pathogens to increase also. So you got the direct effect from the feeding from the SCN, but then you've also got these secondary issues. In severe cases, we can see 75-80% yield loss, and that's in combination then with other environmental factors. As you start to restrict those roots, start to have more feeding, then all of a sudden drought, water issues, whatever that environmental stress is, will be accentuated because of the SCN feeding.
Mm-hmm. We're going to go back to the map we just saw. Mm-hmm. The difference in 5 years has been pretty substantial here. What might this look like in 5 years?
Well, I think part of why the map has changed so much is that we haven't necessarily soil sampled in areas where we didn't think there was any SCN. So now we're like SCN in the Kincardine area could have been there a lot longer than we think it has been, right? So in 5 years from now, because we're just going to be soil sampling so much more, I think we will start to see prevalence in other areas in Ontario. In 5 years from now, I mean, I do expect the spread to keep increasing and the rate to increase because we are moving equipment around more. We're farms are getting larger. Equipment is traveling further distances. So I think because of that, the spread will continue to increase and increase more rapidly.
Mm-hmm. Now, growers can make choices on varieties and they can do a number of things, but the most important thing is to get out and dig into your soils and see if you can identify the cyst, right?
Yeah, during the season, if you get out there and you actually dig up those roots, you can look usually with the hand lens because they're very, very small, those SCN cysts, and see if you can see those little white bumps on the roots and not get confused with nodules or anything else. But taking a soil test, sending it into a lab, having a lab actually give you back an analysis is a very important step also. So I'd say, first identify you've got maybe a production problem in a field and you're not quite sure what's going on. Get out, dig some roots if it's in season, but then take a soil sample, send it to a lab, and have a lab say, yes, we have SCN or no, we don't.
Yeah, now Syngenta, the last thing we're going to talk about here is you mentioned before we went on air here, a little roadshow that you guys are going to plan this year to help growers do just that.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting in March, kind of early April, we're going to actually go out to several of our retail customers and partners and then have some equipment there so that growers can bring soil samples in ahead of the spring planting season, and we can analyze those soil samples right there on the spot and say, yes, we have SCN in that soil, or no, we don't. So it's more of an added way for growers to understand just the spread and prevalence of the pest.
Awesome. Hey, so we'll hear more details on that through the winter?
Sounds great, yes.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for your time today, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Bern.